Power lies in your ability to remain indifferent, even if people are speaking negatively about you. So, who better to do this analysis, or who better to utilize as the muse for this analysis, better yet, than Miss Naomi Campbell? Now, other than obviously her notable achievements in her being an exceptional supermodel and remaining relevant for decades, and this is why I really, really, really am excited about this Girl Power series, because a lot of these women that I'm highlighting, clearly their power is evident because they have established longevity for themselves in some way, shape, or form, right? So it's pretty apparent, that there are certain women who have their power and they mastered utilizing their power to their benefit. But nevertheless, in relation to the topic at hand for this analysis, which is essentially geared towards taking control of your narrative, even if other people are maybe carrying on with some negative conversation about you. The thing that stands out to me about Naomi Campbell, which is very interesting, and in all honesty, I didn't really have this perspective, or it didn't develop until I was a little bit older. Growing up, I just knew Naomi Campbell as Naomi Campbell. All of the other stuff that was happening, I guess, in the press or in the news, it didn't register to me because I either wasn't born yet, or when those newer things were happening when I was born, child, I didn't care. But as I got older and certain people are speaking on certain things and, sharing certain things about their personal experiences in relation to meeting certain people or connecting with certain people, I sat with this for a minute and, just accumulating that information, a light bulb went off. And one thing that I sat with and I wanted to bring to this analysis today is the fact that maybe a lot of the interpretations weren't rooted in accuracy regarding Naomi's intentions. Not saying all of the time, but some of the time this can be the case. If you are someone who has reached a pinnacle of success, you understand that you not only are exposed to potential opportunities, but you are also exposed to a lot of attacks. People who are trying to come for your spot. So with that being said, you have to be a little bit more protective because now you have something to actually lose. And this could actually be better understood by reading some of the earlier chapters in the book Green Eyes. But in relation to, this analysis where I'm specifically talking about power and how Naomi Campbell is a feminine archetype in her own right in relation to not allowing a negative narrative to knock you off of your game. But another thing that I want to take into consideration is the fact that people who have reached those heights, right, they've earned their stripes, for lack of better words. Sometimes they may interpret people trying to get up under them as people trying to ride off of their coattails. And this is completely fine, right? There are some individuals who have a more communal aspect when it comes to meeting people, right? If you feel like you hit it off and everything is cool and pleasant. Now, of course, always lead with your discernment. So don't be hasty with, certain partnerships or decisions you make. Make sure that you analyze whether or not it's a good fit. But, there's also an importance to establish balance, right? Don't become cynical and jaded. But in relation to Naomi Campbell, I believe that maybe some of her apprehension or maybe some of her reluctance, maybe even what came off as her being callous, may have been rooted in her setting a boundary as far as I didn't get any shortcuts when I got here and I'm not going to give you a shortcut. And you also have to be considerate if you are on the receiving end, right? So I'm not knocking it. Just being very fair in respects to your interpretation of certain events and interactions. You can't knock an individual who is perceiving it as, why do you feel comfortable coming up to me and thinking that you and I are going to be buddy-buddy? Because essentially, this could just be you riding off of my coattails. I didn't have that kind of, cosign when I came into the game. I had to earn my stripes. Nobody just allowed me to ride off of their coattails. And rather than, taking it in the context of oh my gosh, that's really mean, understanding things from a systemic, perspective, also through a power lens, even if that's not your personal preference as far as how you approach relationships and how you vet out potential partnerships, you can't knock somebody who does operate this way. because simply what they're doing is implementing a protective strategy. Now, to describe this strategy a little bit more and to provide some context as to why it may come across as mean, I'm actually going to read from an excerpt in the book, In the Lion's Den, Navigating Systems of Power, to actually pinpoint it's not necessarily about being rude or mean or callous, as much as it's about leading with a power strategy. In the excerpt I'm going to be reading from, it's titled, "The Coward Doesn't Get the Crown." And it reads, "Holding power means understanding that the throne can only be claimed through strength. Strength does not always mean exploiting others, but asserting oneself in adversity. A person who compromises their principles forfeits the crown. Those who are overly agreeable may avoid conflict, but in doing so, they also avoid growth and elevation. The saying, 'no pain, no gain,' holds in the realm of power dynamics. Leaders are forged in adversity. They can recover from setbacks and devise innovative solutions that earn them recognition. If someone shies away from conflict, others will lack confidence in their leadership. To be promoted, one must confront challenges head on, not shrink from them." So when we think about, becoming a modeling powerhouse in your own right, you have to exhibit some kind of power first, right? And another thing to take note of is this. I've heard a lot of people give their input regarding their experience with modeling, and everyone's experience is different, but it's still important to take other people's experiences into consideration. In a video that I posted months ago where I was talking specifically about, I can't even remember what the analysis was, but someone had put in the comments that they worked in the fashion industry specifically. And they shared that the nature of the fashion industry, or the feedback that you get in real time, it is very harsh and it's very upfront. And they said that that's just the norm for the most part. Now, there are certain people who have different experiences, but nevertheless, you cannot negate or disregard people who that is their experience, or their experience in that particular field is parallel to what this person commented. And another thing that I took into consideration when hearing about, other people's experiences as a model is the modeling industry in itself is exceptionally competitive. So when we take all of those things into context, right, you have a two-way street. Sometimes that meanness or that callousness is a matter of you preparing for what you are essentially going to come up against in regards to feedback, or people trying to come for your position, because it is very competitive. But another aspect of it could simply just be the fact that you are setting a boundary, right, for the long run. I am someone who leads with, autonomy. I'm someone who doesn't tolerate disrespect. So you start to set that foundation early on. And in my opinion, you can only respect someone who is leading with that type of, presentation, because there's intentionality behind it. It could be a protective measure, or it could just simply be a firm communication boundary. But all in all, the reason why Naomi Campbell is the perfect muse for understanding how to harness your power, especially as a woman, and especially in that, day and age, right, where she was essentially one of the first to break barriers, right, in a respective field, considering, her background and things like that. It's important to do two things. For one, have power over your own narrative, which I believe she did perfectly. Even when people were maybe saying some negative things about her, she didn't allow it to knock her off of her game in her respective pedestal. And additionally, power is also a way for you to communicate with people that you have boundaries and you are not someone to, be toyed with. So in respects to becoming a modeling powerhouse yourself, you first have to exhibit some kind of power. All right, babes, that's all that I have for this analysis today with our lovely muse, our beautiful and honestly our legendary muse, especially when we talk about modeling, right? Being a modeling powerhouse, Naomi Campbell. And also she is our feminine archetype for our Girl Power series. But nevertheless, of course, I want to thank you all so much for tuning in. But of course, I want to hear you all's comments, opinions, perspectives, and personal experiences in the comment section below. I look forward to speaking to you guys in the next one, babes. Take care.